We're part of the Author Event Network, an association that brings authors out to sell books, signed editions of our books at all local events. And today we're meeting with Rob Speigel. Morning, Rob. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me for this.
Well, it's a pleasure.
And being a part of the network.
The network's a great thing to be part of. I know we're having a lot of success for a lot of authors, helping them sell a lot more books, and this is another way for us to help you promote your books and for people to get to know you.
Right.
So I want to start by asking you, what inspired you to become an author?
Well, inspiration's an interesting word, and I get asked that question a lot. I've always been inspired by words. I've been inspired by language. I am a psychotherapist by training and by trade, and so I've authored a lot of words in many different venues and many different mediums. I've kind of launched into creative writing, what I would call creative writing or publishing writing, just about 7 or 8 years ago. And what motivated me initially in that direction was to write a memoir, which is my first book of endings and beginnings, a memoir of discovery and transformation. And the inspiration for that was to leave something for my family. I was not really seeing myself as a published author. I had intended to self-publish it all along, and I was able to do that. And it's a popular book. It tells my story of my own life. As a psychotherapist, I didn't want to write a self-help book that would be sharing experiences that I had with clients or with people that I knew. And it was challenging to write my own story because it contains all of my own story. And I set it up to follow the work that I did in a big section of my training, which included becoming a hypnotherapist, and we did past life regression work. It's, a lot of people call it woo-woo work. But I also fancy myself as a scientist. I'm classically trained in psychotherapy. I've got a graduate degree. I'm licensed. I've followed the model of becoming a mental health professional that's accredited and recognized. So in that training, I had a lot of experiences that I wanted to share with close friends and family to begin with, and finally realized it really would probably have a lot of meaning for other readers. And that brought me to writing the memoir. I wanted to talk a little bit about inspired by words, because as a hypnotherapist and a therapist, my craft is based in languaging. And in fact, the work that I do really looks at the role of language in our development and our experience of life. And so the use of words is, and I think we see that right now in terms of how people are treating each other and how people are treating themselves, is really the foundation of all of that is in our language. In fact, I remember I was going through a physical therapy kind of process when I was in my 20s, and called Rolfing. I don't know if you or the viewers might know what Rolfing is, but it is a very deep, intensive body work process that is uncomfortable and sometimes painful in terms of releasing both physical and emotional energy that's kind of trapped in the body. So the workers dig deep, and this one fellow who was doing the sessions, I was practically crying and yelling, and he was saying, "Let the pain be exquisite. Let the pain be exquisite." And I had never heard anything. I had never heard the word exquisite used with pain. And it really affected me, and it helped.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking with a client the other day. He used the word horrible. He said, you know, I asked him, how did you feel about an incident that had happened a long time ago in his professional life where he had made a kind of a serious error, corrected it, everything turned out great. And when I asked him the question, how did you feel about that? He said, horrible. Mm-hmm. I felt horrible. And that word really hit me. And I realized he's really kind of calling himself horrible by saying the word, I am horrible. So I've always been motivated to examine the effects of words and language on how we feel and how we operate in the world. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that brought me to crafting, which I think authorship is crafting your languaging in a way that moves people. So, you know, my little sign says stories that transform. Mm-hmm. Because much of what I want to write is to help people change in a way that they want to change. Not in a way that I want them to change, but to move them, inspire them. You asked what inspires me. I want my words to inspire others in a positive and transformational sort of way.
So other than words that transform, are there themes that carry through your books?
Yeah, definitely. So my first book is the memoir, and it's a good read. I mean, people call it a page turner, so that's good. And then I challenged myself to write fiction. And excuse me, the Braided came out, and I don't know if it shows up on the screen, but the title is Braided, a Not True Story. So words can be used, and most people have the same reaction you just had when they hear a not true story. It's like, That is, I got to think about that. And fiction really allowed, writing fiction, which I had never tried before. Most of my writing was technical. Most of my reading was technical. I have read for pleasure, but that's not my main reading source. My primary reading source is scientific articles and journals and those kinds of things. I like to read everything. So when I challenge myself to write fiction, there's a lot of me and my memoir in Braided. And Braided tells a story. So fiction allows us to storytell, show, not tell, right? And Braided is the story of a young woman who loses herself to addiction and then finds herself during a death from overdose. And so there's always the theme in both books of endings and beginnings, startings and finishings, that go beyond our lifetime embodied. And I do believe that we spend many times cycling through endings and beginnings. That's why the title Endings is first before beginnings. Something has to end for something to begin. Braided puts that in a fictionalized, and so she goes on a lot of travels and meets a lot of spirits. It's very mystical and metaphysical and psychological.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, does the death stick, or is that basically a near-death experience?
You're going to have to read it.
You're gonna have
no,
to,
I'm not.
Your readers are going to have to read it.
No, that's the spoiler alert.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Well, who then? Who would you say your target audience is? Are you looking for people who are going through these sort of endings and beginnings, cycles in their life? Are you looking for people who are trying to look for deeper meaning and inner pain? Who would you say your target audience is?
Well, I think we all have that, what you just described. So my target audience is everybody.
Okay.
Because you just kind of answered the question answered it in the question, which is, am I trying to reach people to transform? We want to have to change something. Something must not be. I mean, why do people read? Why do people read anything? To be influenced. And so, my target audience, yes. And in fact, I have a third book that I'm working on right now. And the title of that one is On Thriving, Embracing All of the Gifts of the Universe. And I decided, okay, so memoir, fiction. I told my wife, if I ever say I want to write a self-help book, shoot me. And at this stage in my career, I've been doing this 50 years. I'm very clear on what thriving is about. And that's a misunderstood word, I believe, totally misunderstood. And I wanted to write a piece that really delved into the reality of what thriving is, and then give a almost formula to reach and experience true thriving in our lives. So that is a target audience that feels stuck, that feels confused, that feels frustrated, that feels depressed, that feels horrible, like that fellow told me, the other day. And so it's memoir driven. There's going to be a lot of me in that manuscript, and there already is. But a lot of psychology, a lot of experience, a lot of suggestion. So that's my target audience, is what you actually put into the question, which is people who are hurting, who want to change that.
So is it somewhat of a self-help book?
It is.
So did your wife
shoot
just
shoot me? Anybody can shoot me.
Is this supposed to be a surprise?
That it's a self-help book, or to my wife? Or
your wife shooting you? Yeah.
My wife shooting me. If you read it in the papers, then you'll know what it's about.
We'll know.
You'll understand the motivation.
He asked for it.
There you go.
He literally asked for it. Well, tell me a little bit about your writing process. How do you go about deciding what you're going to write, and how to put it all together and structure it and edit it? And tell me about your process.
Really good question, because I did study writing process. There's a wonderful place in Seattle called Hugo House, which is a place for writers to gather and learn and take classes and all of that. And I did want to study the craft. I'm kind of like that. If I get interested in something, I want to delve pretty deeply into it. But my process really is to sit in a place and sometimes most of my writing happens in coffee shops. And I think it's the hustle and bustle and noise and something that allows me to just focus in on what I'm doing. But I really let the words come to me. I don't try to pull them out of my head. The process, it's hard to explain, happens kind of on its own. This memoir was done in 3 months. It just kind of came out of me. Now I have used editors and to help get me straight on good writing style. But my process, and I have studied the arc of the braided follows an arc of a story, which we talk about in writing classes. So my process is both one of trying to connect with something outside of me, and you can do that with characters. That's the wonderful thing about writing fiction, is there's dialogue and there's action and I can see it. I can see it. This book has been optioned to become film content someplace.
Excellent.
So
congratulations.
Thank you. So the process, I don't know if that answers your question. It's very almost indescribable. I go to a place.
Okay.
And I go to that place in meditation also. I don't know if you meditate or if viewers meditate, but meditation has become a real strong component of my life. And that's about thriving. It's about being present to what you're doing every moment of the day, whether it's good or bad. See, a lot of us would like to think that thriving is, oh, I've got the best job and I've got my 401k all set up and my kids are acting right and, you know, they're going to school and the, you know, economy is improving and yada yada. And that's not how I see thriving. Thriving is really being present to everything as it occurs, good and bad, exquisite pain, and not feeling horrible, if that makes sense.
I think so, it does, a little bit. I have different experiences, and I have had some pretty difficult pain to deal with.
Yeah, we all. Yeah.
So let me ask a quick question. When you're writing, the difference between like nonfiction and fiction, when you're writing your fiction, do you have a sense of where it's going to end? Do you have a sense of ending, or are you just following
really
your meditation and your intuition as it goes, and it ends the way it ends?
Really good question. Really good question. So when I wrote Braided, I wrote the prologue and I wrote the epilogue first.
Okay.
And the prologue, no more spoiler alerts, the prologue and the epilogue have a connection to each other that's mysterious and mystical and spiritual. And then I knew what the arc, I knew where the arc started,
right?
I knew where the start ended, and then it was like making a sandwich.
Yeah.
And I just could put whatever meats and lettuce and tomato and cheese and whatever I wanted in between those two pieces of bread. So that's kind of the process of that. I have a different process for the book that I just started that I don't want to really talk about much because it's unique in and of itself, and it's an experiment and a laboratory. All of my writing, I feel, is that. Is just, you know, I like to think about it as being in a sandbox and playing, you know, with toys, and words are the toys. Yeah.
So if you were to describe how you would want your readers to basically take away from after finishing the book? What would you want them to kind of take away? You know, what's the experience or the emotion or the insight that you would want them to kind of leave with?
Yeah, I have one intention and one word that I use for that, and I want my writing to be uplifting.
Okay.
Uplifting, moving the reader to a place that's higher, whatever that may mean to them, than they were before. Yeah. So that's my goal of writing.
Okay. That's excellent. That's excellent. Do you feel like you've achieved that with these books, or are you still working on it? Or?
I've been told that. You mean...
How's your sense of how you're doing in that journey? Because being an author is a journey.
Oh,
and we're learning how to express ourselves. We're learning how to communicate. You know, there's the old adage of you're a plotter or a pantser.
Right.
You seem to be a little bit of a pantser. With you have an idea of where you're going to end, but you're kind of pantsing it on the way.
Right.
What has your journey been like as you're now in your third book?
It's been up and down, I would have to say. I would call it up and down. It's been a challenge to stick with that. It's been a challenge just to keep writing. You know, I'm drawn to it pretty naturally, but sometimes I've got to go write, and if I want to finish it.
Yeah.
So I would say, but it's been a real fun journey in general.
Good.
And if I just don't get into, because I've gotten good feedback, I've gotten very good feedback on all of it. If I just don't get into competing with myself, and if I just keep enjoying the art form, I see it kind of like painting a picture. You can't rush it. You can't push it. You can't force it. Yeah.
Well, real quick, we're going to wrap up here soon.
Sure.
Tell us about your experience with the Author Event Network. What do you appreciate about it, and how has it impacted your writing and your sales?
Yeah. Good question. It's always nice to be in a community, and you know, Hugo House has ended up being a community of writers. Author Event Network for me has been putting myself out there, like today, just challenging myself to actually talk about and present who I am as an author, because I still struggle even with that title.
Yeah.
People walk, somebody came up to me and she said, it was at a dentist's office, and she said, "Oh, you're an author. I read your book." When I logged in, and I went, I was looking around to see, you know, if somebody else had walked in. So the AEN has been a place for me to challenge myself to do this, to market, to expose, to talk about, to sell.
Well, if you wanted to tell the listeners where to go find you, where would that be?
So I'm on Amazon. Get the spelling of my name right. It's Speigel, Robert Speigel, and just go to Amazon. I'm there. I'm in all of the bookstores. You can order the books. I'm online at robertspiegel.com. That's my author's website. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Robert, it's been a pleasure to talk with you today and learn a lot more about your books and your process and the all of the deep emotional lessons and insights that you have to carry. And I appreciate you coming out and spending some time with us today. Thank you very much.
It's been fun. Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
We want to thank not only Robert Speigel, but we want to thank the staff here at the Bremerton Kitsap Public Access Television crew. They do a tremendous job. I want to give our thanks to Peter Stockwell, who helps us with our editing. And I want to thank all of the members of the Author Event Network who make all of this possible. Thank you. Have a great day.